All right, Robert, feel free to take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, George. And welcome everyone. And thank you so much for spending a little bit part of your Thursday with Team Monograph here. I'm about to kick things off and I'm going to share my screen and go right into our slides. George, I just want to double check. Are we all good and everyone sees what I see? Awesome. Yep. Well, thank you again, everyone, and welcome to the very first 2021 Monograph product webinar. And I can't even imagine or even articulate how excited I am to share all the progress we've made, but more importantly, 2020 was extraordinarily a long year. And I'm just really excited to kind of like put that behind us and really kick off 2021 with a huge blast looking forward. I want to take a few minutes right now and just like major shout outs to like the huge team for like getting us through 2020 and really like starting off the new year. I'm gonna have amazing announcements in the next couple of slides of like what we've been up to since January 1st. But like it's really a huge team effort. Shout out to everyone here at Team Monograph. I know everyone here knows George, myself, and Alex really well, but it is a whole team effort. It's a whole family and collective moving the needle to making sure that we're always striving to making project management tools way more accessible and transparent for every architect that passes through Monograph. It is what we're going to cover today. It is with my honor to like really talk about Monograph and where we're headed in this quarter and looking forward to the next. But before we dive into the nitty-gritty details, let's take a minute and pause. And like, I just want to know like how many of you are here joining us? Where are you from? Let's take a second and like really get to like our bearings around how Zoom webinars work. So if you're not familiar, right beneath below, there is a little chat bubble. You please use that and say a little one-liner of like who you are, where you're from, where you're calling in. And let's just kind of like use this as a little quick icebreaker to get things going. I'll do the same. Participate. I am Robert, based here in San Francisco. Awesome. Look at this. We're getting people from all over the country, from Florida, DC, Santa Cruz, Brooklyn, New York, Minnesota. Wow, Uganda. That's amazing. We have even audience globally around joining in today. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit of part of your day to kind of watch us present what we've been here and what we've been up to regards to product at Monograph. Throughout the presentation, there is like a Q&A button right below. Please use that as soon as you have questions. Team Monograph is going to be on standby to kind of like collect and make sure we dedicate a lot of time at the very end of our presentation and do our best to answer all the questions that come up as Alex is presenting. So here's the agenda for today's webinar. One, we'll cover some of the newest enhancements in Monograph that we've already accomplished since the first of this year. Two, we'll be looking ahead to really like exciting upcoming features. And then lastly, very simply, we'll end the webinar with an open Q&A. Alex, myself, and George will be trying our best to answer any questions that come up during the webinar. So just a quick recap of what this is. This is our product update. It's designed to really allow us to speak to everyone who's been a customer for us, anywhere from like a few days to now a few years. Thank you so much for your commitment in joining Monograph and really helping us continue to shape the product. At the end of the day, we're really focused on how do we create a better built environment by enabling not just you, but everyone else that supports you to create a better built environment seamlessly together. Before we really dive in, super huge announcement. Like I said, it takes a huge team effort, and like we've done a lot of hiring since the very first of the year. Here are just some of the faces that are brand new to Monograph within just a short period of time. Huge shout out, like we're growing in all departments. Part of this growth is really our commitment to you and making sure that we're always staffed and making sure we're doing our best to continue to move the needle. To make that possible, we do need to continue to grow. We do need to continue to grow in every department to make sure we give you the highest quality service all the time. With that, I think I've talked a little bit too much already. I think it's time for me to hand the mic over to Mr. Alexander Dixon, co-founder and director of product.
Hey, thank you for the warm introduction there, Robert. Let me get my screen up here. Right, yeah, same photo that you all come to know and love. The hair is growing just like our product. I'm fingers crossed that get back to the barber here one of these days in the summer. But until then, got some product updates for everybody. So the theme of the beginning of this year and kind of the remainder of last year was looking at how can we improve a lot of the workflows and kind of optimize the existing processes that a lot of you have already been performing inside of Monograph. So I'm going to start off here with, as I'm sure all of you have probably noticed, we have a new navigation panel. And the impetus here was to primarily give you a bit more space to focus. We know screen real estate is always at a premium, no matter how many screens you have. And with the collapsible navigation, we hope we can kind of get some of the less commonly used parts out of your way so you can focus on the content. The other bit here is that this is also a kind of a preliminary feature and giving us more space to actually grow the product itself. And so as we add more features over time, this is also what we're looking for here. So hopefully you like it. Feel free to let us know. The second thing I want to talk about is, in addition to giving you more space, we've also introduced some educational resources directly inside the app. And so we've always had a help center, and we've had our tutorials that kick off depending on when you are testing out a new feature. But we wanted to give you the ability to actually revisit those tutorials or directly access guides on the product in the help center from the particular feature you're in. So you'll notice a number of the pages now have these little blue links at the top that feature either a video, a link to the help center, or one of the tutorials to kick it off again in case you forgot something or want to get a refresher on how some of the more complex functionality in Monograph works. The third item here is probably not going to affect a lot of our existing customers as much, but I do want to take a moment and say, thank you to everybody who's helped us understand the most important aspects of the product as you've kind of been learning how to use Monograph. And so what we introduced recently is this in the main dashboard screen is what we called our onboarding checklist. And this is geared primarily at kind of first-time users to give them an idea of what are some of the key things they can do in the app to learn about Monograph and kind of slowly become more familiar with all of the different aspects. So the larger list you see in the screenshot here is directed primarily at new admins. So a lot of you probably won't see that, but all of your feedback has kind of been taken in and we've built this out. So hopefully any new users will benefit from that shared experience. That being said, all of the kind of new users that you add to your team or you onboard to your company will get a kind of pared down version of this as they land in the product. And that's the slightly smaller image you see there. So as you bring in new employees, they'll get at least a snippet of how to become familiar with Monograph. And again, we'll be working on improving this over time based on, as always, your feedback. All right, so I think a lot of you are familiar with this. We launched this kind of towards the end, like late last year, early beginning this year. And so this was revamping the entire forecasting process. And a big key part of this was including an export button as well. So anything that we weren't able to accommodate in Monograph, you could do outside of the platform. And I just want to take a moment here to actually go through a couple of the features we introduced here in case you weren't familiar with them or they kind of passed under the radar. So I'm going to step out of the slides for a second and take you into, so here's the page. It's under the Reports tab in the side panel here. And so obviously the charting, everything, gave it kind of a whole new coat of paint, which I was very happy with. But some of the cool things that we also did were, for example, up here, we now let you filter by multiple projects. So you can select a single project, but you can also then continue to add projects. So you can do kind of more comparative forecasting, looking at different projects you want to group together. The same thing for categories. If you want to look at different categories together, all of these filters up here handle multiple items. So that was one of the big enhancements we made, which hopefully you'll find useful in kind of doing your forecasting. The second item, which I really want to highlight, which again was based on a lot of feedback we received from you, was in addition to the tooltips when you hover over the chart itself, so the bar, this highlights for that particular project in that particular time frame, the fee and the hours projected. Additionally, if you hover over the month on the axes, you can see for that total column, the sum of the fee and the hours as well. I know this was a highly requested item by a lot of you. Totals are just popular in general, and so we're doing our best to accommodate more and more totals in the app at all places. So in case you missed this one because it's not quite as obvious as some other ones, hovering over those, the unit in the axis there will let you know the sum for that entire column. And again, just to reiterate, if you do want to kind of take out the data and do more complex analysis on it, you can always use the export button in the far right-hand corner. And just remember that the export button exports basically exactly what you see. So you can use this interface to compile the data in a way that's most useful for you. And once you hit the export button, the data will come out in exactly the way that you see it on the screen. All right, so that was staring into the future. Another aspect or another feature that we recently launched, or kind of updated, I would say, because it's been there for a while, but this is a very important introduction, is in duplicating projects, we now enable you to set a start date. And so what this means is that when you select a project to duplicate and you click create, we take that start date and we apply it across all of the phases, milestones, tasks, basically anything with a date in the project will now be reflective of the new start date. And again, I'm going to take you through this just to kind of show a quick demo of this one, which is, I think, very exciting. Will hopefully, again, streamline some of the existing processes you're doing already with duplicating projects. So we can kick it off here. Let's take this first project. And we have our phases, we have durations for the phases, we have start dates, end dates, all that sort of stuff already set up like many of you do in your projects or the projects you use kind of as pseudo templates. The other aspect here I want to draw your attention to is for the tasks. If you're using tasks or milestones, you'll notice they all have the dates. And so this project's been kind of fully built out. And if we go back to the overview page and click on the More Actions tab, selecting duplicate now opens up this small window, which lets you select a new start date. So let's make it easy. Let's start on the 1st of April. And so once that project is created, now we can see, okay, our first phase kicks off the 1st of April. It has the same duration as before. And all the other phases that were dependent on that or in a different position date-wise are now updated to reflect that new start date. So hopefully that makes the duplication process a little bit less painful when you're building new projects. Additionally, if we go visit the tasks tab, you'll see here that the previous project, everything was in March. Now we're looking at everything in April. And so relative to that new start date, the tasks and milestones have also been updated. So if you're using those, that should hopefully help you, again, a little less painful in the duplication process. And duplication is very exciting for me because as we'll get to in the upcoming features, there's something else we're building on top of this that I think is going to be very exciting for everybody as well. Next up, we have two two other features that kind of work together in tandem and then have been built based, again, on a lot of feedback we've heard from the community in terms of how we handle kind of the role assignments and the auditing of timesheets. And so one thing that's come to our attention, and thank you for everybody who's kind of been very vocal about this, is that there's been some issues with handling how role assignments work and kind of how timesheets have been continuing to propagate this. So we've done a number of things to help alleviate this issue. The first of which is we introduced a no assigned role tag when somebody adds a project to their timesheet which they are not assigned to. So this is the first step. So this alerts your team and helps build kind of support within your team and shared ownership of that project to help maintain good data. With that being said, we've also made sure that any of the phases in a timesheet that have a no assigned role are not automatically copied over to the following week when we run our timesheet update algorithm. So this should also alleviate some of the kind of cascading effects or that happen afterwards when someone initially adds a no assigned role to their timesheet and then it continuously appears later on. So that should no longer happen, which helps to isolate the no assigned role. Additionally, we've then gone back to the audit page and given this a fresh coat of paint as well. So we've removed a couple of things, including archived projects and inactive users. So you should have a little less clutter when looking in here. And I'm going to also demo this and take you through just a few of the enhancements we've put in here, but generally trying to streamline the process as well so that if you do end up having to audit some people's time, it should be hopefully less of a burden to do, and you can get back to all the other things that I'm sure everybody has. So let's go over here. So again, going back to that first aspect, we have, it's Friday, Fernando's filling out his timesheet, and maybe he put some hours in on, let's see, California. So you'll immediately notice after adding the project, there's this no assigned role tag that appears. So where normally there would be a role of, principal, designer, whatever, it's this red highlighted no assigned role. So perhaps he actually did put some time to it, but regardless, it should initially flag it to the user. Now let's put some time in here. So now what happens now is that, this is all fine. You can still submit or resubmit the timesheet. It's not going to change the actual process there. But if we go to the audit timesheets page, now when you land on here under the roles tab, you can see that this immediately pops up. So Fernando submitted the timesheet with no role, so it's very clear that this is going to appear here. Additionally, we still have the other tabs here. So if you want to see no activities, we can also see, well, Fernando's not great at adding activities either. And so there's a little bit of work to do here. And maybe we should relate to Fernando that he could do a bit better data entry in his timesheet when he's submitting it. Again, some of the other small enhancements we have are being able to filter by project. So we can kind of zero in on the projects that are here. And again, this only shows projects that actually have auditable data. So you're not going to see every project. You're only going to see a subset that you actually have to focus on. And the same thing for people. So the only person who currently has no roles or no activities in their timesheet is Fernando. And so he shows up in the filtering by person. So again, we can check all those, but it's the only one in here. So it's the only one that's going to show up. Additionally, the indicator here is updated again with removing archived projects and inactive users. So hopefully it gives you a better idea of what the volume of auditable items are. All right, so I think that wraps up our initial set on the kind of features and enhancements that we had for you. And then next up, I want to walk through a couple of upcoming features that, as Robert mentioned, the team has grown. We're moving along and we have a lot of exciting things coming up in the roadmap. So as I mentioned before, duplication was kind of a precursor. It's a first step in the direction of what we're hoping is going to be a first-class experience in terms of templates. And we know a lot of you have already been kind of using a subset of projects as templatable projects and doing this. And it's a little bit messy. And so we decided that we really want to dedicate some time to building out a robust templating system, which we're in the thick of at the moment. And so what this will let you do is create a whole library of templates that are separate from your projects. They won't clutter up your main projects page. They won't clutter up your reports. None of the data will be shared. They won't show up in your timesheet page. And you can actually manage and edit these just like you would normal projects. So you can assign your whole team, roles, etc. You can go kind of as far as you want, or they can be as minimal as you want. And then these projects will then appear whenever you create a new project. And so you can see in this screenshot to the side, you can select a template, and you'll also be able, similar to the duplicate function, be able to select a start date. And so whenever that project kicks off, it'll just propagate throughout all those phases and it'll be set up to go. So we're very excited about this. I know it's been, again, another highly requested feature, and it is coming. Additionally, something else we've heard a lot about from you, and I have to say we genuinely appreciate your feedback and your patience as we have been gathering information and figuring out what the best approach is to handle what is a significantly complex endeavor, but I think one that is really going to just compound the value of Monograph for all of the folks who are doing any kind of financials inside of the platform. And so invoices, I'm sure everybody here has some ideas on invoices and how we can improve invoices. And so we're actually dedicating a significant amount of time this year to focusing on not only rebuilding the way you assemble an invoice, but also how that information appears throughout the rest of the app. And so giving projects a better view into their financials, giving you better views into your company financials, et cetera. And so this is a really holistic approach. And we're kicking this off initially by focusing kind of the building, designing, and reviewing of invoices themselves. So a very preliminary kind of screenshot of some of the things that are happening behind the scenes. But I do want to say we've been listening, and now is the time that we're going to be spending a lot of resources on pursuing a much more robust and hopefully better invoicing system that I think you're all going to really like. Lastly, to kind of end the updates here, another thing that we've also been hearing some feedback on, and we wanted to continue to research, is in the project planner itself. And so we know for a lot of you, adding roles and kind of getting all of the numbers dialed in the appropriate way is time consuming, as these projects are large and have a lot of details. And so one of the other initiatives we're kicking off this year is to do a bit more research with customers to understand what are their workflows around assembling a project. How do you think about your team relative to a phase, relative to the roles they're occupying? How does the rates come into the equation, things of that nature. And so myself and Pete, who's also joined us in the product team, are going to be doing some outreach and hopefully contacting a couple of you about to get your thoughts on how we can improve the whole kind of project creation experience. That being said, if any of you have some particular ideas around that, or really have been thinking about this a lot, or been doing a lot of project creation, have some feedback, feel free to reach out to us. We've put an email here, product@monograph. That'll go directly to myself and Pete. And we'll be happy to set up a quick call to kind of understand, what are your thoughts there? And we have a couple of questions we'd love to ask you. So with that being said, remember, support is your best friend. We're here for you. And if you need to talk to us, our intercom chat bubble inside the app is at the bottom right-hand corner via email. And the support team's been doing an awesome job. We've been doing a lot more work in our help center. And so hopefully with the new links in the app, you can take advantage of that. And otherwise, we're going to open it up, I think, now for some Q&A.
Thanks so much, Alex. Yeah, so feel free to either have the chat open or the Q&A to share any questions that you might have. I know we covered a lot. I do have one question, Alex. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the challenge of invoicing in general, because I think your early research was really fascinating. I talked a little bit about it, answering Chris's thank you for the invoice update. But yeah, maybe walk us a little bit about the research, what you found, because one of the things that was just really, really fascinating was how inconsistent, there's no standard, right, ultimately across firms that have been giving us feedback on invoicing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and this is again a big shout out to all of our customers and users who've been very open in sharing how they invoice and kind of what their formats are and stuff, which is extraordinarily helpful in putting together our approach to handling all the different, as George mentioned, the kind of variations that people use. One of the big highlights is that there's a bit of consistency in terms of the invoice actually functioning in a way as a report to the client in both kind of the status of percentage complete, total billed, unbilled, things of that nature, which I know a lot of you have kind of mentioned is missing, and I 100% agree, because when we built the invoicing with a slightly different perspective initially, which having all this feedback and this material gathered definitely points in a very different direction than our initial version. And so that's been really helpful. And so that's kind of, and I think if you saw the screenshot in there, that's definitely the way we're moving. Some of the complexities do arise around the fact that a lot of projects include both fixed fee and hourly phases or activities. And so being able to incorporate both, and at the same time being able to track all of that information within Monograph, because ultimately we don't want you to just invoice your client. We want you to understand against all of the other data sets in Monograph, how do the financials stack up? So, you know, what's the total amount of hours worked? How many have you billed for? What's been paid? What's overdue? What's outstanding? And then at the end of all this, kind of, you know, in retrospectively looking at a project, understanding where are places we can improve, or where are places that we really excelled in this project relative to the financial side. So kind of looking at this whole kind of the arc or the life cycle of a project within Monograph has been a big part of this, and also one of the reasons it's taken us, it's kind of a big endeavor, because we want to, you know, we don't want to do kind of like these more surgical bits. We want to make this kind of a whole process upgrade to the app itself. And again, going back to one of our big parts of our mission is it's kind of overlaying of, you know, project management and cost management. And so really giving cost management its full due in this pass.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for that insight. I think it dovetails nicely into Dawn's question, which she's hopeful that while we think about invoicing, we don't forget old time, right? And by that, she's basically she outlines here that sometimes she decides not to invoice for a small amount of work 1 month, but needs to remember to add it back into another invoice. And so I think that's also part of the complexity here, is that from a cash flow perspective, it's not like, okay, we're going to deliver this thing and here's the invoice done. There's decisions that are being made as to how much to invoice today versus later, as part of a sort of a client management process. And I think that's, you know, that's very much part of what we're thinking through as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it even goes back in the day before we were running Monograph, when we ran our own agency and had to do the same sort of thing. Is you almost, you don't ever necessarily bill for what you work. There's a bit of finesse in how you set up that invoice and send it to a client. So this is very top of mind for us, is how do we make sure that we're able to, again, track the information about both what you've worked, essentially what's been left unbilled or what you didn't bill for in the previous invoice. And again, not you know, direct you in any direction, but surface that information so the next invoice you can decide, do I only bill for what's been worked this month, or do I also include some of the previously unbilled time as well? Because we know there's a lot of variance in actually what the ultimate number is that's delivered to the client, which, you know, the full amount at some point, but in how that actually gets parceled out can be very different depending on the contract. And like, there's a whole lot of variables that are outside of a lot of people's control. And so making sure that we have the information tracked appropriately to give you the most perspective in where your project's at, and let you make the decision about, okay, how do I want to use this information?
Thanks. Thank you for that. We do have some other questions here, different topics. So William's asking, you know, what the timeline for templates. Wondering, you know, William's been spending time using dummy projects in terms with a duplicate workflow as it is now. Just curious about the timeline.
Yeah, so templates, we're hoping to launch sometime in probably maybe early May. We're looking somewhere around there. The good news is that because of the duplicate functionality, if you are using existing projects as templates, you'll be able to duplicate these to create the template And so you won't actually have to do any extra work in transferring over those projects. So ultimately, we're hoping that the transition from kind of these pseudo templates that are actual projects to templates themselves should be pretty seamless for everybody who's already doing a lot of that. And again, kind of decluttering your system from these non-projects that probably create more of a headache for your team when they're trying to track their time and they're cropping up. So yeah, but we are in the thick of it. We've got a lot of progress underway. The duplicate was a big part of that. And so as we said, we already rolled that out. And now we're kind of in the final stages of wrapping up some of the interface around templates itself.
Thanks, Ryan, for that answer, or that question. Carib asks, are we working on linking tasks and milestone dates to previous tasks and milestones, allowing for easy adjustments of schedules for a project?
Yeah, this is another highly requested one, which at the moment, we have not kind of put that on the roadmap, but it's definitely the templates and the duplication is a big step forward in terms of building the kind of logic in the background to handle the relative dates. Relative dates are always a bit of a tricky one, and so similar to how we do it for the linked phases, we're hoping that a lot of the work we've done up to date will let us apply it to the kind of tasks and milestones as well.
Thank you. See, we have John is wondering more about reporting, and so his question has to do with reports and how right now you can look at by phase or by activity. He's wondering if there's a way in which to look at both in one. So as he describes it, it's right now to either or. Some months on some projects we have multiple phases, and it's important to understand by phase and by activity. So I think maybe more clarity on reports and any kind of developments on that front.
Yeah, so reports are another, invoicing is obviously one of the probably the kind of main priority for our team at the moment and going forward because of the complexity and because of the kind of feedback we've received from customers. But reporting, I'd say, is definitely a close second in terms of, we launched the forecast report late last year, which in a way was setting a lot of the groundwork for us in terms of revamping and being able to add additional kind of complexity to the reports that exist in Monograph. Currently underway, we actually are revamping the within a project, there's a reporting tab within a single project that shows the kind of time tracked against the project and either entries or activities and then the expenses as well. And so we're actually right in the middle of updating that to both let you, again, export the data, which is always a big one, and then, again, have more granular control over how the information kind of gets displayed there, along with a chart that is similar to the forecast will let you kind of visualize that aspect. So, and then we have a number of other reports that are kind of planned throughout the year as well. So hopefully we will be able to update and resolve some of these questions around being able to do finer grain controls and the display of information.
Fantastic. We have a question from Shami. This one's interesting because it has to do with QuickBooks, and so we'll see if I can digest a little bit of what's being asked. But essentially, in terms of the integration, right? Once we have this invoice series of features available where it can handle that level of flexibility. The question would be, from an investment perspective, should people assume that they could do most of the work that they would use QuickBooks for in Monograph and no longer need QuickBooks? Or is there still integrations that will make sense to have for both, for different use cases?
Yeah, so at the moment we don't have any plans to have Monograph function as like a chart of accounts or any kind of actual bookkeeping software. So I wouldn't recommend, you won't be able to do that for the foreseeable future in Monograph. We do currently integrate with QuickBooks Online, and there's obviously the devil's in the details in terms of what QB can handle and what Monograph can handle, and getting the data out appropriately is always a fun endeavor. But our goal is to enable you to, in an ideal world, be able to seamlessly pass your invoicing information from Monograph to QuickBooks. And so hopefully you do get to spend the majority of your time in Monograph, looking at forecasting and kind of researching. And we are, again, going back to the reporting aspect, we are hoping to build out some higher level kind of company organization level reporting tools as well this year. And so the goal is to give you the best picture of your business relative to your projects, your team, your time, your money in Monograph. And then whenever you need to kind of do things for, tax purposes or payroll or whatever you have in other systems, let you connect and export that data out to those systems that will work in tandem.
Just because it's also being asked, is Xero integration? Where are we on that front? What can we expect?
Yeah, at the moment we've been spending our integration time has been spent primarily on the QuickBooks side, just because that's a larger constituency of our customers. And then between QuickBooks Online and desktop, there's a lot of variations there in terms of handling data, which has been tricky from a technical perspective. Xero is certainly on our radar, and if the question just depended to see who answered it, but if you can follow up with more information about how you're using it currently and what you'd love to see in Monograph, that would be great, because there are some similarities, but there's also obviously some differences in terms of how the data is passed and how Xero handles things and how QuickBooks handles things. Yeah, and if anybody else out there is using Xero, feel free to message us as well. And so sometimes we just don't know if it's really popular amongst customers and we just haven't heard. That's always something that's good to know for us, so we can then kind of reprioritize that in our ongoing roadmap.
Thanks, Alex. Now, I do want to transition just for a second. We do have a poll that we'd like to run from everyone that's attending. Let's see here. So you'll be able to see it pop up. And so I'll try to give you kind of context. So as we're working through the project planner, which many of the existing customers should be familiar with, it's how you actually develop and design project schedules and plans in Monograph. One thing we're very interested in is to know, while you're going through the process of building out a phase for a project, do you think of in terms of roles or specific people? And this is related to the flexibility of being able to assign different roles for different people. But what we're curious is, at the very start of a project, are you thinking we'll need a principal, a designer for a specific phase? Or are you thinking, we need a Megan or a Bill on this project? And so I see some people are answering. This is great. This is the first time we do this, so thank you very much for partaking in the poll. Great. It seems like a lot of people, well, there's no need to bias people here by saying this, but it seems like a significant portion of people say that they think in terms of people, not necessarily roles. And I think that makes sense. That's very interesting for us to digest. So I'm just going to let it go for another minute. And then we do have a question from Chris that we can transition to. Okay, so going to end the poll. I think that was helpful. So question from Chris. Well, it seems like more of a comment. Something to consider in terms of how they invoice. Maybe Alex, you can digest that for a second.
Yeah, I was reading over that there, and so I think what I think Chris is responding to the idea of the planner as well, and so ultimately he's saying his invoices are then broken down kind of by phase, but then also by the activities, but then tracking the original kind of, I think, budgets and stuff for those particular activities. is tough because the planner is only kind of a phase and people, right? There's no kind of sub breakdown between that, which is a really interesting comment too. It's not really, I haven't approached the planner with that mindset yet. There's been some, we've had some ideas in terms of the more kind of deliverables and milestone sides, being able to add, incorporate time and track time against those as opposed to just tracking time against the phase. But this is other interesting. And I have seen this in other invoices in particular where the phase will be kind of the top level item, but then there might be like 4 or 5 kind of larger activities like, different types of planning or different other aspects that are then also include a budget alongside. So kind of breaking down, they're almost like sub phases in a way in terms of the structure, which is interesting. It'd be something I'd love to know more about from other people, kind of how if they think about that way as well, because ultimately it could be another direction we look at. So perhaps again, as I mentioned, we're going to be coming back and hopefully talking to a lot of customers around the project planner. I think Pete and I will keep that as another question in mind and bring that up as we talk with folks and see if there's any kind of consensus around this is something that's very common or would be very useful, and kind of where that lands.
Okay. You can just see if there's any other questions. Don has a comment about making sure we include total invoice as we're invoicing.
Yeah, no, that's a great comment. And this is something that, again, in going back to the invoicing that, we kind of originally didn't include, but that's also become very, I've seen consistently across a lot of invoices is kind of including almost an account summary of where for both obviously the different phases, including kind of the previously billed, the total, et cetera, but then also at a kind of high level, including for the total, basically the total project or the total account kind of billed to date, the total for the invoice, and all that sort of stuff. So that's certainly on our radar and something that we do hope to add in as part of the kind of new Invoices 2.0. Oh, she said for all invoices. Again, going back to my original comment, the other idea is that in addition to just building an invoice itself, our goal is to, again, build out some of the both reporting tools so that you can see kind of afterwards in an aggregate all the amount of money that's been billed, that's not due, but kind of outstanding, what's overdue, and being able to give you that kind of top level, and so you can drill down into those. And then also kind of going to the beginning of the invoicing process, and depending on your kind of billing cycle, giving you a way of actually seeing what is available to be invoiced, or what projects are kind of coming up that I need to kind of create an invoice or review an invoice for. So again, bookending the actual invoice creation process with those two types of reporting is definitely also a big part, which I think maybe gets more at what Don was asking there in the questions.
Awesome. Great. Just scanning here. Well, I think if there are no more questions, just want to thank Alex for sharing all the progress we've done so far to date, and a little taste of the future. I want to thank everybody for joining us as well, and for being so kind to answer the poll. Robert, do you have any kind of closing comments you'd like to make?
I think to end this, just like extraordinarily grateful that we all stuck together. I know 2020 was a rough year. We did it together, not just here internally, the team Monograph, but with all of everyone's help here. Super grateful. You've paved the path. We've grown the team in the last 2 months. I think expectations are high, but we're gonna deliver on like amazingly proud and like phenomenal like features that are coming soon. So I think just be excited, on the lookout. We're working hard. We hear you loud and clear.
Thanks, everyone. We'll follow up with a recording for those that want to share with the rest of your team, and really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Adios. See you.